Well, I'm delighted to be with Bob Stimpson here. We're outside the Co-op in Castletown, and a very good reason for this. Bob, as always, the work you do behind the scenes on checking on history, what's going on, and we did a thing with you because you brought a book out about this particular subject. So, over to you. Why are we outside the Co-op?
In 1866, a gentleman called Frank Gill was born, actually where the Co-op is today, and he then went on to become the greatest telephone engineer in Europe and the UK. And we're now planning to put a plaque up to commemorate his birthplace, because this being the centenary of the BBC, they were formed in 1922, and believe it or not, this Manxman was fundamental in the creation of the BBC, because if it wasn't for him and his determination and diplomacy, then the BBC would not exist today as a single entity. Going back to 1922, before the BBC was formed, you didn't get radio programs, you had wireless telephony messages, and these only lasted maybe half an hour, and they then switched the transmitters off, and that was primarily to let them cool down and recover.
Wow.
So in the 1920s, early 20s, the idea was, or the plan was, that the radio manufacturers, and at the time radio wasn't the term used, it was wireless, the wireless equipment manufacturers would sell their radio wireless sets to the public, and that money would then pay for the programming, the wireless messages. So that was the intention to going forwards. But at the same time, in America, it was chaotic, because anybody could do anything. You and I could set up a radio station tomorrow and broadcast away with no limits at all. But they didn't want that to happen here because it would cause chaos. So the GPO, the post office in the UK, called all the manufacturers together and says, between them, come up with a couple of cooperative organisations, was the way the post office described it, to do the broadcasting. The manufacturers couldn't agree at the time, but they did agree that Frank Gill should be their chairman and sort of arbiter. So he started the discussions in May the 22nd, 1922, and that led through ultimately to the creation of the BBC later in that year.
It's just an amazing story, and you did all this research on it, and his name almost would disappear without much thought, wouldn't it?
Fortunately, Frank is actually featured in New Manxworthies, which was published by Manx Heritage Foundation about 10-12 years ago, but it didn't mention his involvement with the BBC at all. So it's such a major undertaking that Frank took to negotiate between all these manufacturers and to make sure that the BBC was created as a single entity, that I've been in contact with the head of BBC History and the Institution of Engineering and Technology, the IET.
Now, it's quite interesting to think this will be one of the first blue plaques on the Isle of Man, if maybe the first one, isn't it?
I'm not quite sure about that. Obviously, in England, the English Heritage runs a blue plaques system predominantly in London, but you can see plaques throughout the UK. And as far as I know, I'll be happy to be corrected, but I think this is going to be one of the first ones here. Right.
Well, you're putting planning basically, so that's why we're here today, because these things take a bit of time. All being well, and you get it, when will the plaque be unveiled?
Frank originally started his negotiations with these manufacturers on the 22nd of May 1922. 22nd of May 2022 is a Sunday, and the intention is to get the Lieutenant Governor, who's very kindly agreed to unveil the plaque around about 3 p.m. on that Sunday afternoon. So weather permitting, that's what we'll do.
Might get some coverage from the BBC as well, I hope.
Well, maybe, hope so. But,
Well, this is fantastic news. And if people haven't seen your book, let's give it a plug, because it was such a amount of research you did on this.
Yes, it's simply called Frank Gill, and I think it's still available in all good bookshops.
And what's your next plan? What are you working on?
I'm continuing my researches on Manx inventors, from the very clever ones to the example of the nutty ones. The Manx hotelier in Douglas who invented a way of smoking a cigar from both ends at the same time. I assume he died of nicotine poisoning, but I can't be sure.
Watch this space. You'll have all the details.
Thank you. Yes.